Cattle market headed lower here, but yet some feedlot managers asking for higher cash. So technically, if you take the fundamentals and set those aside, technically, who do you think is going to win this game?
Well, we've been fairly constructive coming off the 97 level from a couple weeks ago. Yesterday's price action, obviously a very disappointing way to start the week, especially after we saw a higher cash trade at the end of Friday, 124 in the south, 126 in the north, and talks of higher cash trade yet again this week. It was very disappointing to see the futures board wasn't able to hang with it, but the good news is the pressure today did fill a gap from a couple weeks ago, 103.95. We saw some buyers step in down there, and I think that's going to provide a near-term floor in this market. 106 has obviously been kind of a big tug-of-war area, a big line in the sand for the Bulls and the Bears. We need to see a conviction close out above this. If we're able to do that this week, I really think this market has a lot more room to run to the upside, the near-term target being that 109 level. This represents about the 50% retracement over the last 14 months, so that's kind of what we're looking for. I think over time you see the board and the cash work together to narrow that basis a little bit.
They're quite a ways apart right now. You mentioned that 109. If we could break through that 109, it would probably, or let me ask it this way, could it surpass 110 easily, and what's the next level of resistance then above that?
I think they could surpass 110, but it's not going to be easily. It's going to be a battleground, I think, between 109 to 110, and I think we might stall out a little bit there. One thing keeping, I think, a lid on the market here this week is option expiration. May options that trade off of the June futures. A lot of those in-the-money calls are now out of the money, and I think those are probably going to be expiring worthless by the end of the week. Once those options are off the board, I think that should be a green light to work higher.
What about the feeder cattle? Because if you go down the road even further, then if you look at some of these supplies, eventually there could be a shortage of feeder cattle later down the road, right?
Exactly, and you know, this is a futures market, not a today market. So even with the fat cattle, we're looking at the big wide basis, but we're looking at the futures contract, not the now market, and kind of the same thing with the feeders. Ultimately, I think feeders are going to probably struggle to get a significant amount of room to the upside, but I do think there is value down here against that 143 level, 200-day moving average trend line from the April lows, as well as some other key retracements. So I am friendly here in the cattle complex. I just like to see a little bit more follow through as we round out the rest of today's session.